Speaking of food all these days, I bet you are all hungry, so I'll try to be quick to get us to lunch as soon as possible. Let me see if I can make this work. Just a few words about the cooperative movement for those of you who don't know about it. There are about, these are estimates from the United Nations, more than 2.5 million cooperative enterprises around the world, and they are owned and managed by 1 billion members. And this is a fundamental difference between cooperatives and other types of companies. Our owners are not investors. They are not looking for a return on their investment. Our owners are members, are the users of the products and the services that the cooperative has. So for example, if we were all farmers, we might be interested in joining together, create a company that we all manage, and call it a cooperative, and that company will take care of our interest. But our interest is not to get a return on the capital that we put in. Our interest is, if we are a farmer, to sell your goods to market, for example. And this, you'll see that in terms of food waste, is an important distinction. Cooperatives around the world, they employ or sustain the livelihoods of more than 250 million people. And the largest 300 cooperatives alone have an annual revenue, a combined annual revenue of 2.5 trillion US dollars. If, for example, if Facebook was on that list of the largest 300 cooperatives, it will only be number 51. So my point here is that there are very big, huge cooperative enterprises, but there are also very, very small. And I'll try to give a little bit of examples from one side and the other and see how this all comes together. We have members in more than 100 countries in the world, and we cover almost all sectors of the economy. There are cooperative housing, cooperative banks, cooperative insurance, agriculture, fisheries, retail, etc. And the International Cooperative Alliance, that's my organization for whom I work for, was established in 1895. It's one of the oldest NGOs in the world, and it's the umbrella organization for all the cooperative movement. And basically my job is to represent all this diversity of cooperatives to the global institutions like the UN or the World Bank, for example. Now, how is it possible to bring all this diversity within one umbrella organization? Well, because cooperatives are values-based and people-centered enterprises. And they all share the same values and principles that have been defined globally since the 19th century and have been changed according to the times. But there are these cooperative values and principles that are the same for all cooperative enterprises in all countries, in all sectors. And they include things like open and voluntary membership, democratic member control, education, training, and information, concern for the community, self-help, solidarity, and others. And why do I say this? Well, first of all, for you to understand a little bit who we are, but also because if you link this to food waste, you see here where we are coming from. For us, fighting against food waste, it's not a question of profits, it's not a question of costs of value or financial returns. For us, it's really a question of concern for the community, ethical values, education, training, and information of our members. And I'll give a few examples of how that thing works. And of course, cooperatives are still enterprises. If that carries a financial benefit, well, all the better. So we take this question of food losses and food waste from, I'm going to take it from two different sides. First of all, I'll focus on the on the production side. And what is our solution to that? Well, on the production side, cooperatives, what they do is that they aggregate farmers and give them scale. There are, as you know, millions of very small family farmers around the world. And what we try to do is that we try to get all these people together to form cooperatives. And by that, they'll optimize their processes, they'll have better facilities, better logistics, they'll have better education, because again, it's one of our fundamental values to provide education, training, and information to members. And so, by doing that, by improving the way that they produce food, necessarily you'll reduce food losses and food waste at the production level. And also, you'll find better access to markets, to technology, to finance. I'll be very quick about this. If you have questions, you can ask me later. But I'll give you two examples from two very different perspectives. In Indonesia, there is a women cooperative. It's formed about 25 women. And they do nutmeg waste recovery. Basically, the men in those areas, they get the pit from the nutmeg and they use it for some purposes like, I can't remember what they use it for. Anyway, they use that part and the rest of the nutmeg just goes to waste. And so these women, they formed a cooperative to use that and do nutmeg juice that they sell all over Indonesia. And by that, they recovered the waste and also empowered the women in those villages to take care of their own economic empowerment, let's say. Now, this is a very small example, 25 women in Indonesia, in a very small island. But if you go to the other extreme of the scale that we have, the CBH group that you see down there is the largest exporter of grains in Australia. And so they have a huge operation, not millions, thousands of farmers. They get the grains, they export the grains, they have the whole operation. And they have decided to set as their target for the Sustainable Development Goals, their contribution to the Sustainable Development Goals, to have zero waste to landfill by 2030. Now, this is a very ambitious goal, taking the dimensions, but it's just to illustrate that the question of waste is not just about the financial benefit that it may have for a cooperative, but rather based on the principles and values that they have. Now, if you go at the other end of the chain, which is the consumer part, there are very large retail cooperatives, especially in Europe. To give you an example, cooperatives are market leaders in food retail in countries like Italy or Switzerland or Denmark or Finland, and sometimes with a very large percentage of the market. And I won't go into this because Walmart has spoken about. Of course, there's all the efforts of retail optimization that deals with logistics, supply chain management, product handling and packaging. Just a quick example from the United Kingdom that I like. They had these packages of tomatoes, and they found that just the fact that punching holes on the packaging would control the level of humidity and would increase the lifespan of the tomatoes for a longer time. So it's all that part that I won't go into it because Walmart already focused also on the point of sale. Promotions that are based on value rather than on quantity. So, for example, some of our members do not do promotions like buy one, get two. They don't do that because they feel that contributes to food waste. There are also examples about things like selling bulk products instead of pre-packed or units. The question of the portion sizes. If I had more time, I would go also into that, but for the sake of time, I prefer to focus on another part as well, which is consumer information and education. And that regards information on labels and how to use the products, the use of new technologies, and education for sustainable consumption. And I'll give a few examples of what we do in this field. But I have a question which I think is very interesting. There was a study done in Italy that asked several consumers what they would consider was the main reason for them in their households to waste food. What made them waste so much food? And 49% said, anyone? I guess? Think about your home. What is the reason why you waste most of the food that you do? Because we all do. Let's not. What?
Bad planning.
Bad planning. Almost. What consumers said was, we buy too much. We buy too much. And that's an interesting thing, because maybe it's the elephant in the room, or maybe it's a catch-22. If you produce more food more efficiently, and you have less losses, less waste, all across the supply chain, you get to the end, and what you have, more food available, right? But who's having that food? Is it the average 4,000 calorie diet person? Is it the people that are needing food because they are dying of hunger? Where does that food all goes for, and how do we manage this? And we feel that part of the, of course these are complicated issues, but part of the discussion should be on consumer education for sustainable consumption. And that's a very important thing that also our members take care of. I'll give you a few examples. So in Sweden, the co-op there, which is the third largest retailer on the market, was the first retailer to start selling wonky vegetables. So products that normally you wouldn't see on the shelves, like a curved cucumber, which are perfectly good, but normally you wouldn't see. This is a way of fighting food waste. In Denmark, the co-op there was the first retailer to start selling bananas by the unit instead of pre-packed or in bunches. I don't know what the correct word in English is, but basically this allows for consumers to better manage the quantity that they buy and therefore reduce the waste that they have. In the United Kingdom, there is the co-op there has a program called Winning Together, where they are engaging with all the actors in the food chain to share the benefits of reducing waste. And in Finland, there's an app called Foodie, which also in Denmark, the co-op there developed, which basically, it's a very useful thing. For example, if you want to eat, say, a steak with fries and you go to a supermarket, the app allows you to buy the right quantities for what you want to cook for that day. And also it has instructions about how you can conserve the product better at home and how you should do it. Should it be in the fridge, outside, etc. So the use of technologies. This project, to a good end, in Italy is the donation that Walmart already spoke as well. Also, our members also do that. In Italy, just to give you a number, The food donations reached 26 million euros. I don't know today with the current markets how much that would be in US dollars, but let's say it's more or less the same thing. And the final one, the food waste is a responsibility of everyone in Spain. In Spain, the consumer cooperatives there, they take 10% of all their profits every year, and they use it in a fund for consumer education. And what they do with this project, they do other things, but this project basically is to do awareness-raising events in several cities about food waste and try to gain consumer awareness about these things. Well, there are many more examples that I could share, but if you're interested in the questions later, I can go into that. Just one final note, there is also a new trend in the cooperative world, which is to create worker-owned cooperatives that collect and recycle waste. So we all know there will be some level of unavoidable food waste, always. And what you do with it is either you use it, for example, in Finland, they use the food waste to produce ethanol that they sell in their own petrol stations as fuel for cars. So it's a very interesting project. And there you have an example of several cooperatives that do collection and recycling of food waste to turn it into energy, for example. Well, thank you very much, and I'll gladly answer your questions.